Welcome to the Family Business Education Initiative Outreach Series responding to COVID-19. And our first session is going to be on selling to the government. Obviously a big customer, but obviously there are some hurdles, some pitfalls. But fortunately, we have Debbie Scott here to talk with us about that process. Thank you for being here. I know that you work a lot on selling to the federal government. You work a lot with our veterans. Is this as daunting as it seems?
It's not really. There's a lot that's in common with working with commercial business. You just kind of need to know the different points in there, getting into it. But just like in commercial business, you have to understand your customer, know what they want, and that type of thing. Yeah.
Give us an idea of walk us through what we're going to talk about today.
Okay. Well, first we're going to talk a little bit about why would you want to go into business with the government. You know, people have heard there's a lot of rules and regulations, and there are, but there's some really good reasons why you would want to consider doing that if you're not already in business. And then I'll talk a little bit about exactly what is a small business. I think we have found with COVID-19, when they said small businesses under 500 people, business is a little bit larger than what a lot of people would have guessed. That are defined as small business. And for government contracting, it's a little unique. There are some specific small business categories that we'll go over that have some preferences when you're bidding, where maybe you're eliminating competition and only bidding within that category. And then if that's something that you're interested in really moving forward with it, once you hear about it, how do you get started? What steps do you take? And then how do I find those opportunities? How do I find those customers? It's actually a little bit easier in some regards than it is in commercial business, because there's a lot of systems you can go to find that information. There's some specific things that are unique right now with COVID-19 that are having an impact, whether you're looking to get into government contracting or if you're already in and are a contractor. There's been some impacts. And then who can help you? I have questions, what assistance is out there that can help me?
So I guess there's certainly opportunity there, and I guess that's why you would want to do. Is it worth all the hassle? And I guess the answer to that is that yes, at the end of the day, it is.
Yes, it is. I was actually worked for a small business. My background's accounting, but I started there at a small business, and he basically started the business with himself, subcontracted himself out. And you know, over a number of years, he built it to an $80 million business. So wow. Yes, you can be successful in government contracting. Why would you want to do business with them? Well, they are the world's largest. That's a strong statement, that they are the world's largest buyer of goods and services. And it's likely that the government is buying what you sell, either directly or indirectly. Right now, during COVID-19, what's real important is that your customers pay their bills, and the government pays their bills. And in fact, they've got initiatives to pay bills faster for small businesses as we're going through COVID-19. In 2018, they did $120 billion with small businesses. So it's not a small market.
Yeah.
B with a B.
Wow.
The 19 numbers I don't think have been posted yet. But the other thing that's unique about it is the government's very serious about making sure small businesses have an equal opportunity in getting business. And so there are goals that are established every year. Small business goals for subcontracting are 23% of all contracts have to go to small businesses as a goal. And then in the various categories, there's goals that are established as well, and they've got teeth behind them. I mean, there's somebody's evaluation somewhere that is dependent upon hitting those goals. And those goals, if the goal is on a prime contractor, they take away fee if they don't meet it. So they're serious about making sure.
So the last bullet there is highlighted in red. COVID-19 is continuing to impact federal and states' needs for supplies and services. Is that a mix of positive ways and negative ways that it's impacting them?
Probably. It was intended in a positive way. The government is needing to buy a lot of things in support. Particularly when we're talking about medical and PPE and that kind of thing. And so, you know, COVID-19 has impacted and, you know, created some opportunities for companies that may not have been in that business to be able to solve and help solve, be part of the problem solving.
So let's get started. But before we actually dive in, it's going to be, well, what is a small business?
What is a small business? And again, for all the COVID and the CARES Act loans, small business was defined at 500. employees or less. But in the normal environment and in government contracting, it's going to be based on your industry code. And there's the government issues something called the NAICS, or North American Industry Classification System, and every business will fall under one of these codes. And they say, okay, if you're in this code, then you're small if you're under X, and that can either be number of employees, or it can be your average revenue over the last 3 or 5 years. They're in the process of moving it to a 5-year average.
And that's, again, dependent on the code. And I think
depending on the code, yeah. So here's an example. An example would be HVAC, heating and air conditioning repair. And I actually worked with somebody one time who said, I want to go into government contracting because I know the current contractor at Columbus Air Force Base is large, and therefore I can have an advantage. And we said, well, let's go see what small and large is. And when we looked it up, and we looked up that code for HVAC, you are small if you're under $16.5 million in revenue over the last 3 years as an average. And so, when we guessed how much this other competitor was, they were small too. So, it's interesting. Small is a lot larger than you think. A lot of manufacturing firms, it's 500 employees. Telecom, it's 1,500 employees.
So you've got your small business size, but then it comes down to the category and just how important that category is.
Correct.
Right?
And you don't have to be in one of these categories to do business with the government. There's obviously the Raytheons and Lockheeds of the world. They're not small, but if you are starting out, you're going to be small, most likely. And the categories kind of build upon each other. You're a small business if you meet the requirements for that size. Okay. You can then break into additional categories if you're small, meaning you met that size, and you are considered small disadvantaged. Then that is another category, small disadvantaged business, and that is if you're presumed to be disadvantaged if you are African American, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Rim, Native American, Hawaiian Native. Okay, and then you can. Those are presumed. There's some exceptions to that too. You can also get qualified. Once you have been a small disadvantaged business for 2 years, you can apply to SBA for the 8A program. An 8A program is historically kind of like the gold standard of all the preference programs that you want. And so it's a 9-year business development program. It does allow you to get some sole source awards. And some of these categories do as well, but it is something that once you have been doing business for 2 years, you can apply to SBA. You can't just declare. There are also women-owned small businesses, and you have to be at least a 51% owner, is owned by women. They have to run the day-to-day of operations of the company. It cannot be somebody putting it in their spouse's name,
Okay, now how do you weigh that with disadvantaged businesses? Say you're an African-American woman, how does that sort itself out?
You would actually, of the ones I've talked about so far, you'd be qualified in 4. You'd be a small business, you'd be a small disadvantaged business, you may be in the 8A program if you've applied and gotten into that, and you're a woman-owned small business. And the more check marks you get, actually, the better advantage you have, particularly if you're going to be a subcontractor.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about hub zones.
Hub zone. Hub zone is historically underutilized business zones, and it's very easy to find out if your company could qualify as a hub zone. Your primary office or principal office has to be in a hub zone. You go to SBA's website, just type in hub zone map, put in your address in the search, and it comes back and says, yes, you're qualified, or no, you're not. I actually put in the business address of the incubator where our offices are at, and it's in a hub zone.
Interesting. Okay. And of course, lots of opportunities for veterans, and you have a lot of expertise in this.
Correct.
With the boots to business. But tell us a bit about how a veteran could benefit from the.
Well, there's 2 categories: veteran-owned small business or service-disabled veteran-owned small business, and both of these you can self-certify, meaning when you sign up, you say, yes, I'm check-marked on those things. Most of these, Small business and small disadvantage, you can self-certify. 8A, SBA has to approve. Women-owned is a new process that starts the 15th of July. You do that through an SBA website to get validated. But veteran-owned, as long as you're doing business with any agency other than VA, Veterans Administration, or Veterans, you can self-certify. If you're going to do business with the VA, because they do about 22% of their contracts with small business, service disabled, veteran-owned businesses, you have to go through an extra certification process.
And there are some additional opportunities for small businesses as well in the forms of the set-asides.
Correct. So the Federal Acquisition Regulations, or the FAR, is the body of regulations that regulates government contracting. And there's a whole section in there about small businesses. And in there it says opportunities under 150,000 shall be reserved for small business concern. Not, gee, we think about it, but shall be reserved. So things that are under 150,000 are reserved for small businesses to bid on. Things that are over 150,000, there's something called the rule of two. They can go out there, and it's a process called sources sought. They say, we're seeking sources that are women-owned or veteran-owned. And do you have this qualification? And if you respond to that, and 2 or more respond that are qualified and can do it at a fair price, then they can set that aside, or they're required to set that aside, that only that category can bid on it. So, if you're bidding in the $120 billion space, you're bidding against a lot of very large companies with a lot of resources. So by swimming in that ocean, it's going to be a tougher swim. However, if you now get that down to pond level, where you're only bidding against other women-owned or only bidding against other service disabled owned, you've got a better opportunity. For
obviously much smaller contracts, smaller pond, smaller fish.
Not necessarily smaller contracts. The company I used to work for prior to coming to Mississippi State, we were an IT company, and we bid on IT outsourcing businesses. For instance, if you went to Fort Rucker, we ran the networks, we ran the phone systems, we ran the mailroom, anything to do with information management, and those were $30 million contracts.
Wow.
So yeah, the contracts themselves don't have to be small. You just have to be capable of doing the work. Yeah.
All right. So I've got a small business. I am ready to go. I call you up. I say, help. Let's get started.
Well, and the first thing you said was really the starting point. You have to be in business first. Okay. So if you're not in business yet, first get into business. And so there's 3 basic steps to register. First, you get a DUNS number, and it's a free thing. You don't have to pay Dun & Bradstreet for that. That's kind of in change right now. By the end of the year, it's going to be called SAMI. But basically, you fill out the information about your business. You get that DUNS number. Then you can go into SAM, and SAM is the government's System for Award Management. It's at beta.sam.gov is the website. They're in the process of moving everything about doing government business to this SAM site. So you register in there. You're going to need banking information, so your bank account needs to be open, that type of thing, because that's how they pay you. You're going to get electronic payments, which makes it faster to get paid. So you register in SAM, you certify if you're all these business sizes, and then when it's done, they want you to complete a profile. And so there's a third system called the Dynamic Small Business Search that is where your information's pulled in, and you go in and you add extra things to your profile. And that's a system that government customers can go in and look to try to find small businesses that meet certain qualifications. Large businesses can use it to go find small businesses to subcontract to.
Right, which leads us to our next topic here, subcontracting. It's a way to get your foot in the door.
Correct. When you're first starting out, it can be a little bit daunting because there's rules you may or may not know about. You'll get a contract that has clauses in it, and when I first started out, I opened up every one of them and read them, but it's just a title is all you'll see. As you get more experience, you're going to know more about those things, but when you're first starting out, If you start out subcontracting to a large business that already knows that, they end up being kind of an informal mentor to you. So it's a great way to get your foot in the door. Sometimes you only have the capability to do one small thing, but the contract requires something larger. Well, then you can find that one small thing you do very well at and subcontract that piece only to a larger prime. You get to learn the processes from them. It's going to be a lot less cost for you to develop the proposal, because large proposals can be, lots of documents. And they're basically getting the relationship with the customer. So you don't have that marketing cost to go do that business development with that government customer, because the prime you're with has done that.
We talk though about use the phrase eating the elephant. You want to do business with the federal government. How do you find those places, those opportunities?
That's right. Well, this is one advantage really over commercial business. You got to go to list, hit the streets, look at y'all business at the website at Mississippi or something like that to find businesses out there. But finding opportunities, one of the unique things is used to be a system called FedBizOps. It's now in SAM, and it's just called Search Opportunities. And when you go in there, you can use these NAICS codes, these industry codes, and say, I'm in this code, I'm looking for this business in this state, or whatever, do a search and it'll come back with the opportunities that are out there. Anything over $25,000 has to be posted in this search system. I've also used it to find subcontracting opportunities. I go and look at awarded opportunities. Who won something recently that maybe they need help with? And I can go approach them, because it'll give you contact information of who won that contract. And so, like I said, in one regard, it actually gives you more information than you have in the commercial world.
And so COVID-19 has thrown so many things up in the air, and obviously it has impacted this process as well.
It has. There are federal agencies, and some of them are FEMA, GSA, DOD. They have actually put up special websites that has particular things they're looking for under COVID-19 and particular processes to go through. We could list them all, but they change daily, type of thing. So, your best friend sometimes is Google. Look for COVID-19 in the various agencies that you're looking at targeting. They've also done is they've changed some of the authority that they have for buying. So, for instance, if we were to go to Columbus Air Force Base, which is here locally, there's something called a micro purchase threshold. They don't necessarily have to advertise. They have to get multiple quotes, but they can do something on their purchase card up to $10,000. Well, now, because there's a lot of things that need to be purchased and purchased very quickly, and that's a quick way to buy, they've increased that threshold from $10,000 to $20,000. There's also a set of processes that's called simplified acquisition procedures, and those procedures, they've raised the threshold from anything under 250, you can use the simplified, to up to 750,000. You don't have to go through the more elaborate proposals to bid on things. And then if you're actually selling something that's a commercial item, where you can compare one mask to another mask, they can use those simplified procedures up to a purchase of $13 million.
Wow, but there have been some other impacts as well. Yeah,
there are. These impacts that I'm going to talk about are impacts that are really related to existing contractors. So if you're already in government business, it's also had an impact. Maybe you're doing work on a federal installation or a military installation, and they've shut the installation down and you can't do the work any longer. You've got employees, you've got that kind of thing. So the OMB issued guidance that says, okay, to the extent that you can, you're allowed to maximize teleworking. Okay, and we recognize not all of that's going to work depending on what it is you do, but to the extent possible, we will allow the maximization of telework. Also, it could mean that performance dates are going to get missed if you don't modify the contract. Okay. I have to deliver something on such a date. So there's flexibility to get a modification to your contract.
And is that relatively new with COVID? I mean, was
Yes,
the federal
this is
government-
all related. This guidance is all related to the impact of COVID.
Okay.
And then if you're, that's going to come under an excusable delay, and under government contracting, you'll get performance rated. Your history will get performance rated, and having a delay because of COVID-19 and going through this process will not impact your rating.
Okay.
There was also the CARES Act allowed modification of a contract. Say installation closed, there wasn't an ability to do teleworking, and that contractor is now paying paid leave to the employees. On a case-by-case basis, they're allowing modifications to contracts where they can bill that to the government and get reimbursed for that. Also, you have to annually register in SAM, and if you are having a difficulty do that, they're going to give you a 60-day extension to do that.
All right. So what have we missed here?
Well, one thing to go back on is don't forget that selling to the government also includes state government and local governments. Okay, so like Mississippi has a place where you can register to do business with the state of Mississippi. And so you want to get registered as a vendor.
And that's the Secretary of State's website?
No, actually, I think we can provide the information that has the website. But if you just do selling to state of Mississippi, it'll come up with this registration website for you to get on the vendor list. Okay. Now, some of it might seem a little daunting. So what we want to kind of leave with is there is a lot of help and a lot of support at no cost to the company that's out there that you can tap into. Now, first of all, SBA, Small Business Administration, they handle the small business programs. When you're registering to be an 8A or you're registering for a hub zone, they're going to do that process. But their website is really, really good for small businesses, sba.gov. And you can get a lot of information from there. They've got a learning center there. You can go in and put local assistance, I think is one of the tabs, and you put in your zip code and it'll tell you all of these other resources, what the closest one to you is. Small Business Development Centers, SBDCs, there's almost 1,000 of those across the country. We have one here at Mississippi State. And they provide free counseling and training. If you are a veteran or a spouse of a veteran, Veteran Business Outreach Centers can provide assistance. They can either provide assistance directly, or they can be your one-stop shop to get to navigate you to all these other resources, kind of find the best solution for you. PTACs. PTACs are actually set up directly to help you do things with the federal government, state governments, and local governments. They can help you get on bid lists. They can help you get registered in SAM. They can help you get this certification for veterans that if you're going to do business with VA. They hold, in normal times, they hold matchmaking type events and industry type events where you get to meet customers or meet other contractors that maybe you want to team with. So a PTAC, I think we have 5 here in the state, 5 regions, offices, and get connected up with them. Once you get on their mail list, you get all kinds of information that helps. And then there's also SCORE chapters. SCORE is now just SCORE. It used to stand for Service Corps of Retired Executives. All over the country, they're volunteers. They've retired from industry. They keep information. If you want to find a mentor maybe that is skilled in the business you want to be in or that you're in, and match up with somebody who's been in that business, they've got ways to get you matched up with those mentors.
Well, Debbie, you have been in this space for a while, both on the veteran side and small business administration. What words of encouragement would you give to small businesses out there that would like to do this but may just find this process daunting? Well,
I would say reach out to some of this assistance, the support organizations, the SBA resources are what they're called. And reach out, sit down and talk to them. There are also a lot of webinars that are going on from a lot of these different organizations that have very specific things. I saw one this week, for instance, that the Mississippi District Office for SBA is providing a webinar on pricing and negotiation on government contracts. I think it's on Friday of this week. But there's a lot of information out there. Part of it is starting to know where to look, and these SBA resources can help you figure out where you start looking with that.
And we do have some contact information for you that if they would like to reach out with questions, they can get in touch with you. And so here is your information.
That's right. I'm Deborah Scott. My email address is dscott@business.msstate.edu. I am the director of the Boots to Business Revenue Readiness Program, which is a program for veterans that are interested in going into business.
Well, we want to thank you for all the knowledge that you brought to this. It was very, very comprehensive, and we sure appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
And we want to thank you for tuning in and hope you found it informative. Again, this was the first session of the Family Business Education Initiative Outreach Series responding to COVID-19.